Welcome to the Silver Screen Podcast. I'm Jared Boomer.
And I'm Katie Gainey West. This is a podcast about movies and pop culture.
And today we are reviewing the new Netflix movie Blonde, about the life of Marilyn Monroe, starring Ana De Armas in the lead role of Marilyn Monroe. So that will be our discussion today on this episode. We did want to give you a trigger warning for there's going to be lots of sexual content in this episode, especially once we get into the review. Also discussions of rape, abortion, abuse, physical and drug abuse, and lots of different stuff. So this is a very heavy movie. So it would be hard to talk about it without discussing those things. So just know that going forward that those topics will come up a little bit later on in the episode. But to start, we have, of course, news. Some sad news over the past week. The rapper Coolio passed away. You may know him for his song Gangster's Paradise. He had a lot of other hits as well. Fantastic Voyage, another big hit of his. But unfortunately did pass away this past week.
I know, that made me really sad, and it was crazy because I do a lot of work with minority populations and healthcare and stuff, but I had just read a day prior, I think, about how Black men have extremely high rates of heart disease and heart attacks. And it sounds like Julio, they think, died of a heart attack, and it just made me really sad. So definitely a good reminder to get your heart checked, and exercise and eating well and stuff like that are all good for longevity and a healthy heart.
Yes, so some sad news there with the passing of Coolio. Also, you found out Ed Sheeran may be getting sued. This, I think, has happened to him before. Okay.
Yeah, but did you not hear this? It's bad.
No, I did not hear this particular case.
Also, okay, I don't know if it was Ed that mentioned this, but someone has said, I don't think that this was an original thought. Somebody said it a long time ago, but there's only 88 keys on a piano. If people know this, and
there's only so many chords too.
There's only so many chords. There's only so many things you can do. It's kind of the same with, in my opinion, how you can't copyright book titles and stuff because there's so many. It might be a new idea to you, or it might be based on something you've heard about, read about, and you forgot, and it comes back in your head, and you think it's original, but it's not. I definitely think plagiarism is 100% wrong all the time. But I don't think that's what he was doing. But yeah, I'm just surprised you didn't know, Jared, because you are in the know on music.
I know.
But it is to do with, I think it's the song Thinking Out Loud, and it has to do with Marvin Gaye.
Okay.
I think it's Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On. And it's basically, they're saying like it's the same song, or he stole like some of the structure of the song. And so I thought it was like $100 million.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. Okay. This story says, $100 million.
Yeah. So it's bad. I don't know if that'll happen, but just it popped up a couple times in like news items for me, and I was like, well, that sounds pretty bad.
Yeah, yep. So looks like there's no date for the trial yet, but apparently this has been going on for a while. Like he got sued for this back in 2016, and then the case was dismissed, but then they relaunched the suit. So it seems like there's a lot going on there.
That makes sense because I thought that they had talked about this before, so I'm glad that wasn't all in my head. Okay.
And then he was just sued. The one I knew about was he got sued back in June for Shape of You, and somebody was accusing him of plagiarism, but he won that lawsuit, so that was not deemed to be plagiarism. But that's the one I knew about recently. So, but lots of stuff going on with Ed right now. He also just announced he's going on tour next summer, so he's going to play a bunch of football stadiums. So maybe coming to a city near you. If you want to go check out Ed Sheeran, he's great in concert.
Jared, what did you think about Rihanna doing the halftime show? The announcement.
Oh, I think that will be very cool. I hope we get some new music from Rihanna before the halftime show. I'm assuming we will, since this is she's performing at halftime. But I think she'll probably have a lot of special guests. I thought last year's halftime show with kind of the legends of hip hop and rap, if you will, was very, very good. So I'm excited to see what Rihanna does this upcoming football season.
Me too. I really like Rihanna, so I'm excited about it. I think that's a great choice. And I feel like it's not a polarizing choice.
Yeah, yep.
So I'm
Apparently
pumped.
did you see they also, I guess, asked Taylor Swift if she wanted to do it and she turned it down, according to reports I saw? Yeah. I don't know how much of that was legit, but according to a couple articles I saw, they asked her if she would be interested, and she said no, I guess. So,
isn't her new album coming out like next week or something?
Yeah, next week or week after, midnights.
Okay.
So, yes.
Exciting.
Another news item we have with another musician is that Dua Lipa and Trevor Noah are together. So, congrats
We
to the both of
think.
them. We
We don't
think.
know. We
Yeah.
think. I was a little shocked by this. Well, I'll tell you who's annoying me. I am
Oh
annoyed by
boy.
Gigi Hadid and Leonardo DiCaprio.
Okay.
I'm more annoyed that they're being sketch about it, or like not. They're like being sneaky without being sneaky, and that bothers me more. So no one has said they're together, but they're like staying in the same hotel somewhere. And also, I don't want to make up stuff that's not happening. I don't know, but I feel like they're like not being sneaky and making sure people know this, and that bothers me. And then Dua, I really like, and I like Gigi as a person quite a bit.
Mhm.
And I think she's 27 and she has a child. So that's already breaking Leo's normal situation.
Yeah, that's old for Leo.
I know, and a child. Like normally a child's not involved either. But then Dua Lipa and Trevor, it's not at all that I definitely see the attraction to both of them, no question. But I just would never have thought those two. But who knows? So those are my thoughts.
Yeah. And I mean, Trevor Noah also announced that he will be leaving the Daily Show as well.
I know.
So that announcement happened. He's been hosting that show for 7 years, of course. Took over for Jon Stewart back in 2015. So he's going to be leaving the Daily Show. I mean, it feels like maybe a good move for him. I feel like he has now. Jon Stewart obviously hosted that show for quite a while, but Trevor Noah has also hosted that for. I mean, 7 years is a long time to do anything. So
Yeah.
I can see where he maybe wants to pursue some other avenues in his career and things, and try out some different things. And that makes a lot of sense. He did write a book a couple years ago, which you and I both read, which we thought was really, really good.
Oh my gosh, so good.
We'll see maybe if he does more of that, or if he wants to do more stand-up comedy instead of like late night comedy. It'll be interesting to kind of see what he does next in his career. He's also hosted a lot of award shows. He's hosted the Grammys the past couple years.
Yeah.
He's done a really good job with that. So, yeah, but lots of relationship news and lots of musician news this week. In fact, all of our stuff was musician related, pretty much.
Oh, and well, speaking of musicians too, the last thing, Jared and I were looking at just people downloads and who's listening to episodes, and I think that some of the drama for Don't Worry Darling kind of helped us as well, because it's our most downloaded episode in quite a while. So thank you to those of you who have already listened to it, and please tell your friends. I'm hoping, I mean, maybe we would get new listeners even from it, but I do think that some of the drama surrounding it might have made people even more intrigued, like, well, I might as well listen to this and see what's up. So thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you. And if you're sticking around for another episode, we thank you very much. So, and also get well soon to Chris Martin of Coldplay. Did you see he has a lung infection or something?
No.
He's on bed rest or health rest for the next 3 weeks. So they had to cancel some tour dates and everything. Yeah.
Oh no. I hope
he's okay.
Yeah.
Yes. He said he has a serious lung infection, and he's been put under strict doctor's orders for the next 3 weeks. That was on their Instagram. So,
well, I hope he gets well. And then, Jared, I thought of one other thing. I don't want to add fuel to the fire about this Don't Worry Darling stuff. We're trying to get past it. But I did notice this week that Miss Flo, was posted about a new movie that's coming out on Netflix, The Wonder. Or Wonder? Is it Wonder or The Wonder? The Wonder.
Okay. Yeah, I saw the trailer for this. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And I just thought, oh, well, that's interesting, because she definitely wasn't doing that for Don't Worry Darling. And part of that infuriated me, because I'm like, if you're going to say there's nothing going on and there's no issues, this is adding fuel, because you're immediately posting about the next movie you're in, but you didn't post about the other one. I don't know. It's fine. But either way, that movie sounds like it might be interesting. I don't know. I read a book called The Wonder a couple years ago. I don't know if this is based on that, but I kind of hope not. But we'll see.
Yeah, it looks like it's coming out on Netflix November 2nd, maybe. So,
yes.
Or maybe a little bit. It looks like it's in theaters November 2nd, maybe on Netflix a couple of weeks later. So, don't know if it's based on that book or not, though. So
I don't think it. I hope it's not.
Okay.
I am looking, while we're moving on, I am looking to see if it's like based on a story or anything. But so far, I'm not seeing anything that says it is. So
okay.
Oh no.
Oh.
I think
Katie found it.
I think it is that book. Oh.
And it wasn't a good book?
It wasn't my favorite, but maybe it was a weird time in my life. Okay. Well, I guess
Okay,
we'll
well,
see.
that's Miss Flo's next project. So,
She'll be
um,
great.
yeah, she'll be good in it no matter what. So, no corrections this week. So, we'll move on to recommendations. I did go see another movie that's in theaters right now. That is The Woman King with Viola Davis.
You did?
I saw it this week or last week. I can't remember. Really enjoyed it. It's really well done. If you don't know the storyline, it follows basically a tribe in Africa that are trying to fight against this other tribe because they are like, people are coming in to try and take them as slaves. So they're trying to prevent that. And it's about a group of women warriors. So Viola Davis leads this group. It's got a lot of great performances in it. I thought the script was very good. It's a quickly paced movie as well. And so if it's still in theaters near you, I would definitely suggest that to go check that out. But that was one of my recommends for this week, The Woman King. And then I started reading a book, but I didn't really like it, so I stopped it. I'll probably start reading another book. So that's happened to me a lot lately. I haven't found a good book that I'll get like halfway through or a third of the way through and be like, nope, and just be done with it. Especially if I get them
Yeah.
from the library, I'm like, oh, just return it, go get something else. So
I'm just completely overwhelmed with work and with the play I'm in and stuff that I haven't had much time to focus on a book, but I need to keep it up if I want to get my 100 books in the year.
mhm.
But I did look up the book. I was right about The Wonder.
Okay.
I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it. I don't think it was my favorite book. Anybody who, I've talked about this so many times, Book of the Month Club. It was one of the first books I got from Book of the Month Club.
Okay.
But back then, now every time I read a book on Goodreads and on Book of the Month, I give a rating and I leave a review, even if it's brief. I'll be like, loved it, or really liked this character, or didn't like this. But at that point in time, several years ago, I wasn't doing that. So I just put, I liked it. But I remember, I don't think it was my favorite book, though, because you can do love, like, or disliked on Book of the Month. And I
Okay.
did liked.
Okay.
But it's definitely the one I was thinking of. I did check it's the same author and everything. And it's the same author who did Room.
Oh,
the book
okay.
Room, and then
Yeah.
that
movie.
movie was based on.
Yeah.
But anyway, Jared, I was listening to you. I feel the same way about reading. So I hear you. And I don't have, for my recommendations, any books or anything this week. I did talk about this podcast recently, Hollywood Crime Scene, but they have had, what I did was I went back to look at old episodes because I didn't start at the beginning. And I have heard 3 fantastic ones this week. So I wanted to point them out. Again, the podcast is Hollywood Crime Scene. I listened to episode 196. They talk about Murderous Row, which was the women that made up Murderous Row. They inspired Chicago, like the movie Chicago. And first it was a silent film, and then it became like the musical that we know that Catherine Zeta-Jones and Renee Zellweger were in. But dang, the case that Roxy Hart, like her thing is based on, and the women who made up Murderous Row, it's fascinating. So really, really good episode there. Again, it's 196. And then the other one I listened to was a 2-part episode. Again, it's Hollywood Crime Scene. It's episode 188 and 187. They talk about the bling ring, and I had seen that movie. I knew about, I knew about it, but I didn't know the ins and outs. I remember when that was happening. I remember thinking, like, what idiots? But also, it's crazy. The case was not handled well. Like, they got off the kids. I mean, they're not kids. They were like 18, 19, 20. They got off on a lot of crimes because of how it was handled by the police. Like, it was just crazy. And then I couldn't believe how many times they would go back to people's houses to rob them, like going to Paris Hilton's house like 4 or 5 times. Same with Rachel Bilson. And then how long they kept it going before they got caught. It's just insane to me. And then also, it definitely was a different time compared to now, where everyone has a Ring doorbell or some kind of security system. We're talking early aughts. People did not, like, these celebrities either had keys under a mat or their doors were just unlocked. Just crazy stuff that you think of for the 1950s, but not 2002. But it was wild, and the episode was it was just very funny, very enjoyable. Again, it's Hollywood Crime Scene. I think they do a great job of covering this stuff, and they're really funny. That's all. So highly recommend. Great podcast.
Very nice. So those are our recommendations. And now we will talk about the new Netflix movie Blonde, released on September 16th, limited release. Forget which film festival this had its premiere at. It was either Venice. Okay, Venice.
I think it was
They
Venice.
gave it like a 87-minute standing ovation or whatever.
I think it was
wasn't
like
that
14,
long,
but it was it was too much for this film, let me tell you.
Released wide on September 28th. That's the date it hit Netflix. It's rated NC-17. This is Netflix's first NC-17 movie. There was a lot of talk about that it was going to be rated NC-17 instead of R. We'll maybe discuss that a little bit as we go on. For sexual content, that's the main thing in this movie, why it's rated NC-17.
It's like 90% of the movie is sexual content.
Yeah, it's pretty much all that's in it. So it's 2 hours and 46 minutes. Yep, that 2 hours and 46 minutes. IMDb 5.7 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes, critics 44%, audience 32%. Neither group is liking it. Box office, no box office because it was on Netflix. Synopsis, a fictionalized chronicle of the inner life of Marilyn Monroe. Fictionalized being the key word here, not based on true events. Some things in the movie, Katie did some research, found an article. We're going to get into that here in a few minutes, where we are going to go over some of the things that did actually happen in Marilyn's life that are in the movie, and some things that did not happen in her life but were in the movie. So some critics reviews for this movie. First up, we have John Anderson of the Wall Street Journal, who says Andrew Dominik, that's the director, pseudo-biography is one long slog into sadness and more than predictable tragedy, despite a touching portrayal by Ana De Armas and the deliberately artful and often startling filmmaking of Mr. Dominik. Next up, we have Gary Kramer of Salon.com, who says Andrew Dominik's insufferable NC-17 adaptation of Joyce Carol Oates' novel of the same name is to Marilyn Monroe what cubic zirconium are to diamonds. Monroe wants to be taken seriously, but Blonde never feels sincere. So he liked it. He was a big fan of this one. Next up, we have Manolia Dargis of the New York Times, who says, watching Blonde, I wondered if Dominik had ever actually watched a Marilyn Monroe film, had seen the transcendent talent, the brilliant comedic timing, the phrasing, gestures, and grace.
Thank you so much. I asked myself the same question. So thank you so much, Manola. That was spot on.
And then finally, we have Johnny Olazinski of the New York Post, who says, feels hollow and left me cold despite the visual splendor and a committed turn from Ana De Armas as Marilyn. We should also mention we did review Gentlemen's Prefer Blondes, correct?
Yes, we did. Let me find out what episode.
We did do an episode on that. While Katie's looking that up, I'll talk about Andrew Dominik. He's a New Zealand writer and director. He's known for the movie Killing Them Softly, the assassination of Jesse James, and Chopper. And next up, he will direct a movie called War Party. So he's done a few projects. You may have seen the assassination of Jesse James. Killing Them Softly is actually a pretty good movie as well. But those are some of his most recent projects. And then, of course, Blonde. So we will take a quick break here on the show, and then we'll come back. We'll talk about the cast and our likes and dislikes for Blonde. And we're back here on the Silver Screen Podcast talking about the new movie Blonde on Netflix, about the life of Marilyn Monroe. Were you able to find which episode we did review Gentlemen's Prefer Blondes?
Yes, thank you. We did it. We did like a fun, if you guys remember, we did series for a while. So for a couple months, we did like old Hollywood movies. We did Black community movies. So this was part of our golden age of Hollywood movies. It was episode 66. And Jared and I both ranked that movie very highly. Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. We both really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so you can check that out if you want to hear some more Marilyn Monroe content and a movie that she's great in, which you should watch instead of this movie. And that was also during COVID as well, when we were just like, we need movies to review. So
yeah.
But this movie, starring in the lead role of Marilyn Monroe, she is played by Ana De Armas.
All right, Jared, just for some positivity and because I am obsessed with Ana, can I please get a crush alert or 4? Thank you so much. Ana De Armas plays Norma Jean, also known as Marilyn Monroe. We mentioned her in episode 156, which was recent, when we covered The Gray Man on Netflix. She is originally from Cuba. That will come up later in this review. She is best known for No Time to Die, Knives Out, Blade Runner 2049, The Gray Man, and Knock Knock. Next up, you can see her in Ghosted and Ballerina.
I think
Next up,
I heard about that movie Ghosted. She replaced somebody in that movie.
I
Who
didn't
was
know
it? Do you
that, but I
remember?
know I had talked about it because there's a book called Ghosted that I think it's based on, and Chris Evans is going to be in it. And then I looked up Adrien Brody, and Adrien Brody's going to be in it.
Oh, Scarlett Johansson was supposed to be in that movie. So
With Chris Evans, how cute would that have been? They're like besties.
I know, but now it's going to be Ana De Armas. So,
I
and
love
that
Ana.
is supposed to come out next year on Apple TV Plus. So
Can't wait. I'm actually really excited about that one. Then next up we have Julianne Nicholson, who plays Gladys, which was Norma Jean's mom. She was born in Massachusetts. She's best known for August Osage County. You might have heard of it. She plays Ivy Weston in that. Also I, Tanya, Black Mass, and Kinsey. She didn't have any upcoming projects listed yet, but I do think Julianne Nicholson is one of those actresses that, like, you've seen her in at least one thing because she pops up everywhere.
Yeah, she's really good in I, Tanya too. I believe, if I remember correctly, she plays Tanya Harding's mother in that movie.
I think that's
Is that right?
And I think so.
Okay.
And then I was excited about Ivy when she played Ivy Weston. That's who I had played in August Osage County. And I thought she did such a good job in that role. So I was a little intimidated when I did that part. And then lastly, we have Adrien Brody. He plays Arthur Miller. We just mentioned him in episode 161 when we covered Midnight in Paris. He is originally from Queens, New York, and is best known for The Pianist, The Great Budapest Hotel, Midnight in Paris, and Detachment. Next up, he will also star in Ghosted, along with Manodrome and Emperor. Great actor there. I forgot to mention, too, he's won an Oscar. I can't believe I left that out. My apologies. He won for The Pianist. We mentioned that in that episode as well. And then this movie is also starring Bobby Cannavale, Evan Williams, Xavier Samuel, Casper Philipson, and Lily Fisher. Lily Fisher plays Marilyn as a young child.
Also, correction, Julianne Nicholson did not play Tanya Harding's mother in I, Tanya. She played her coach.
Oh, okay.
Allison
it's been
Janney
a long
played
time.
her mom. Yeah.
Oh, of course. And she won an Oscar. What is wrong with me?
Yeah.
Okay. Great job. I forgot too, because I can picture her right now smoking the cigarettes and talking to Tanya. Okay. Anyway, moving on. Great job. Thank you for catching that, Jared.
No problem. So now we've got an article that you found on Vulture. I also saw another article on Time that was like, what's real and what's fake in Blonde. This one was done by Esther Zuckerman on vulture.com, and you found a few facts about some things that did actually happen in Marilyn's life that are in this movie, and some things that did not, that they added for, dramatic effect, or were in the book, but again, the book is fiction. So
yes. Absolutely. So thank you so much, Jared. I will go ahead. This was found vulture.com, like Jared mentioned. The article is called What's Fact and What's Fiction in Blonde by Esther Zuckerman. And I'll start with the true things because they got about two things right. One, Marilyn was paid less than Jane Russell for Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, but I could not find accurate, verified numbers for the difference in their numbers. A lot of people say it was a difference of Jane Russell getting 6 figures and Marilyn got 5, but either way, it wasn't very fair. Now, Jane Russell at the time, it is true, Jane Russell was more well-known at that time, but it was called Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, so it is weird. But that is true that she was paid less than Jane Russell. The other thing that's true, unfortunately, Joe DiMaggio, the famous baseball player, was married to Marilyn. He did beat her. We see it's alluded to that in the film. After filming the famous skirt scene in The 7-Year Itch. I've also seen that movie only once, but enjoyed it. But that, of course, is where Marilyn stands over a steam grate and her skirt flies up, and it's just really sexy. And honestly, to me, it's pretty tame. But back in the day, that was like watching porn. So anyway, Joe DiMaggio was there when they were filming, and he was irate, and he beat her after that. And then they said there was a quote in the article that said, the next day, the makeup artist, people didn't ask her, but they had to cover bruises and stuff all over her. So sad. As far as the false things, get ready. So the first thing, the dad stuff freaked me out. We'll get into that. But Norma Jean's mom, and if we say Norma Jean, same as Marilyn Monroe, Norma Jean was her real name. Her mom actually told Norma that her dad was dead. but Marilyn doubted it. So we see in the film, they're like, he's this actor or he's this famous man that has a fireproof bunker that they can stay in if there's a fire in California, that he's coming back into their lives. In truth, they did figure out who her dad was, but her mom told her most of her life that he was dead. So Marilyn didn't believe it. But this is a quote from the article. Per Charles Casillo, who wrote the 2018 biography Marilyn Monroe, The Private Life of a Public Icon, Monroe's mother had an affair with her colleague Charles Gifford, a recently divorced man. When Gifford learned that Gladys was pregnant, he wanted nothing to do with the baby. Eventually, according to Casillo, Monroe did try to make contact with Gifford, but he rejected those advances. Another biographer, Donald Spoto, author of 1993's Marilyn Monroe, the Biography, disputes the claim that Gifford was Monroe's father, but he does acknowledge that Gladys hung a photo of Gifford in their home. End quote. So all of that to say, I think in the end they did know who her dad was, but there were so many conflicting reports. I don't have his name for sure on hand right now, so I'm not going to tell you what's right and what's wrong. But either way, the way they portrayed everything about her dad in the film was wrong, which annoys me. And then to go along with that, she calls everybody daddy. And I know now we think it's funny to say like zaddy and daddy and people think it's sexy. It's personally not my preference. Also, I think it's gross. But I think it's even weirder when watching someone like Marilyn Monroe in this film call all of these like icons. I was going to say...
Titans.
No, I was going to say Titans, then I thought no tycoons, then I thought no icons. Okay. The point is, Titans of their industry, to call them daddy was strange to me. And it was like not even sexy times. It was just like, what up, daddy? Hi, daddy. How was your day? And I just think that's strange. Even my own father, I don't say like, hi, daddy. Great to see you. Daddy, how was your... I feel like the daddy phase left pretty quick, but to be fair, my dad has always been around, but there is no evidence to support that she constantly called every man in her life daddy. It doesn't mean that she didn't, but it seemed like there was one husband that said a couple times he did say that, but I don't think it was a constant thing like they portray it in this movie.
Yeah, it was giving me like big Annie vibes with when Daddy Warbucks. Yes, she'll say that, but that's different because like he is kind of like the father figure, in that movie. So
I just can't get over. What did I say? What did I say? I forget what I said.
Tycoons.
Tycoons.
Or tie-ins. I don't. Yeah, it's a mixture. Another thing that you found in this article was that she did not have a threesome with Edward Robinson Jr. and Charlie Chaplin. In the movie, they portray this threesome, and they also show Eddie calling Marilyn about Chaplin's death. But in real life, he died 6 years after Marilyn did, so he would have been alive when she passed away.
Yes, and also it was Charles Chaplin Jr., so not Charlie Chaplin we know from silent films, his son. And then Edward G. Robinson Jr. was the son of the famous legend Eddie G. Robinson, or Edward G. Robinson, but they called the son Eddie. But none of that ever happened. So
completely made up. The other thing was, too, that Marilyn actually met Arthur Miller when he came to the set of her movie, As Young as You Feel, not in an acting class, which they show in the film that they met in an acting class. That's not true as well. So, and that's kind of interesting, too, because, like, they really use that to, like, as the jumping off point for the relationship. And it's like, you could have just very easily made it on the movie.
Right.
Like, why did you fake
Put the real story. I don't understand. And then the last, that made me think of something when we were talking about all of this just being so fictionalized for no reason. This kept making me think of the show Whose Line Is It Anyway, where they say where everything's made up and the points don't matter. I felt like that describes this movie perfectly. Like, everything is false. Don't worry about like fact. And then the final two things that were in this article, these are the two things that a lot of people are talking about because it's salacious and it's sexual and whatever. There's a ton of abortion talk in this film. There's multiple abortions depicted, and there is no evidence to support that Marilyn had any abortions. If anything, they think she might have had endometriosis, which could have caused some extreme pregnancy complications, but there's not any concrete evidence that she had an abortion, let alone multiple ones. And even if she did, that's really none of our business, and she's passed on anyway. So I don't know why we have to talk about it so much. And then the other thing people keep talking about, and again, sorry, we keep talking about sexual things, but I think we've warned you all. But there is a blowjob depicted in a scene with President Kennedy, JFK. Some aren't even sure that they slept together. There's actually no evidence to support that either. Now, I personally think it's highly likely that they did, but they are only known to have been around each other on 4 occurrences in life, and there's only one picture ever of them photographed together. So they might have slept together. I don't think that's that weird to believe in, but definitely the scene of him like kind of assaulting her and stuff, there is no evidence to support that. And I don't even know why they put that in there. I think that was just kind of a gross, let's talk about sex, and they probably had sex, like this powerful man and this powerful woman.
And they acted like, too, like it was like a common thing that happened. Like she would come in a lot to like, have sex with him. And obviously, like you said, them only being together 4 times in their life, like that was not, even if it did happen, it wasn't like a recurring thing that happened a ton. So
right. And
yeah,
I'm so sorry, everyone, if you heard crying. I don't have kids. That was Rupert, my cat, in the background. But Jared heard it, so I'm assuming you guys did too. He gets upset when I'm in this closet with the door closed because he can't come in here. So sometimes he cries.
Yeah, and he just wanted to give his thoughts on this movie. He did not like it either.
He did not like it. Actually, he was in, I watched it in my bedroom, and he did fall asleep for almost all of it. Like, he was not into it. So
Fair.
Yeah.
Very. I mean, I don't blame him. So
yeah.
let's talk about some likes, and then we'll move into dislikes. I don't have too many likes for this movie. First up, we'll talk about Ana De Armas. She's obviously committed to this role.
Mhm.
I feel kind of bad for Ana De Armas because she's had this and she's had The Gray Man. If you look at those projects, you say, okay, I'm going to be in a movie with Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans, action thriller. This should be good. Then you look and say, okay, I'm going to play Marilyn Monroe, one of the most iconic women ever. This should be good. Unfortunately, both things were not great. But she does try in this movie. She's at least working with what she has here. The script is not very good, which is going to be one of my dislikes. But the main thing people are talking about, and that I noticed too, is the accent. She is Cuban, and it still very much sounds like she is Cuban in this. I mean, she sounds like she does in, James Bond, where she's not even trying to really do an accent at all. That's just her normal speaking voice. I mean, it sounds very similar in this movie. It's a little bit more American, but there's still a lot of Cuban in there.
Yeah, I do want to say, like, I really appreciate Ana de Armas's efforts. Like, you can tell she was so committed to this. I've watched so many interviews with her talking about this, and they filmed this before the pandemic. Like, this was filmed in 2019 and just now came out. So I can't imagine being worried about your performance and playing things back and being excited for something for that long, only for it to be so bad. And I don't know. I can tell she committed to this role. I personally also struggled with the way she looked, but I definitely thought the accent, it was almost like she wasn't trying to cover it. And I thought that was strange because for as many, I personally, please don't hate anyone, I personally don't think she looks a lot like Marilyn Monroe. I think they made a valiant effort. I thought the hair was fantastic. I know she talked about they bleached her eyebrows, all sorts of stuff, but she was still too thin. Marilyn was voluptuous, and Marilyn was not fat. A lot of people say that, but she was curvaceous. I mean, she was a stunner and was not rail thin, was not a waif. And I thought that Ana just looked too thin to like truly fill out that figure. And neither of those is bad. They're both beautiful women and their bodies are great. But Ana, especially the accent, just really stuck out to me. And I felt like there were only 2 scenes that stood out to me where I thought she looked and sounded and acted like Marilyn, looked and sounded like Marilyn. And that was when they did the song Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. And then also when she's with Arthur Miller, this was a magazine. I remember this photo shoot, like seeing pictures of this all my life, where she and Arthur Miller, she's wearing a blue dress and she's leaning up against a fence and they're getting pictures taken together. And I think they'd recently gotten married. I thought she looked and acted a lot like Marilyn there. But to me, I just don't think she was the best fit for this, and I was really confused by it, and it was hard for me to look at her. I never fully believed it was Marilyn I was looking at. The whole time I thought, I'm looking at Ana De Armas.
Yeah, I get that. I had the same thought too. Is that it wasn't like she just like fell into the role or whatever, or made you think that, oh, I'm not watching Ana de Armas. Like the whole time I was like,
Right.
yep, this is Ana de Armas. So like, she did really try with what she had to work with, and obviously they cast her for this movie, and she's going to try to do the best she can at portraying Marilyn Monroe. But unfortunately, the accent and things, and then just not. She looks somewhat like her, but not a ton. I feel like there's probably other
Mhm.
actresses you could get that were closer. So, another like is this movie is visually kind of stunning in spots. It has very good cinematography. It's shot very well. There's a lot of very interesting set pieces. I will say early in the movie when they're like driving through that fire in the car, I thought that was a very cool visual sequence. There's some other sequences in this movie, especially the stuff with you mentioned her and Arthur Miller, Adrien Brody's character. Some very pretty sequences during that time in her life when they're like
Yeah.
on the coast in Maine and just kind of in New England and those type of areas that were very pretty to look at. So we got to give it props for that. At least it did look nice.
Yes, that's the only thing I liked about it. It did look nice. And well, and also I should say I think I bring up costumes and stuff a lot, but I did think they did a great job with hair and makeup and just making the whole movie very pretty. I didn't want to watch it for 3 hours. It wasn't that pretty. But they should be applauded. I mean, the good things I can say is that I could tell the actors were committed. I thought the hair and makeup was beautiful, and the movie was beautiful to look at, but there were just so many things to dislike about it. And I found this movie pretty offensive.
Yeah, I did too. My only other like before we move on to dislikes is I thought Adrien Brody did a really good job in this movie as Arthur Miller.
Agreed.
That's one of the
Agreed.
happier points in Marilyn's life, at least according to this movie, where she actually had a little bit of joy in her life at times. And I thought he played that role very well. He's a pretty wide range actor. I mean, he can do something like this, but he can also be in a Wes Anderson movie and just be quirky and weird.
Right.
So I thought that this was kind of I hadn't seen him do more of a serious role in a while where he wasn't like in a kind of more of a comedic type thing. So I thought that he did do a good job in this movie though. So
yeah, and Adrien
go
Brody's one of those men that's he's not like on my list of men, but I feel like he is like so he is really sexy, but he just seems very chic to me, and I would believe it if you told me he was European, even though we know he's from Queens. I just really he just seems to be a very confident, intelligent man, and there's something very attractive about that.
So we'll move on to our dislikes now. We already talked about Anna not looking much like Marilyn Monroe. The big dislike I had was, besides what we're going to talk about in a minute with all the sexual stuff, is the script. I thought the script for this movie was awful. It was not very good. It's a lot of Ana de Armas getting emotional for really no reason. I mean, there's no build up to that in a lot of scenes. It's just like she's crying and you're like, okay, well, I guess she's sad now. But because you don't really get a lot of backstory, I mean, it's Marilyn Monroe, so like about the character, but like still there's no reason to like have you feel the feeling she's going through. I just thought the script was bad. It doesn't feel like a coherent story to me. It's obviously taking times in her life where she's like with these famous people, but I felt like it was just kind of moving from like scene to scene instead of actually telling like a coherent, like, we get the part with Joe DiMaggio. Joe DiMaggio doesn't pop up in the movie again. We get the part with Arthur Miller. That part's done. Then we get the part with JFK. That part's done. So it's like three separate, and then we get the part with her childhood where Ana de Armas isn't on screen for the first 20 minutes of this movie. And that's a separate part. So it's almost like 4 or 5 different chunks that they put together to make a movie. I just didn't feel like it had a very coherent story to me all the way throughout. It was almost like, okay, it's almost like a play style, but even worse than that because a play will still make sense. It's like, okay,
Right.
here's Act 1 and Act 2 is going to be completely different from Act 1, and it's like you're watching 4 different movies almost.
Yes. I definitely struggled with the script. My biggest issue period in the script as part of it is just that this is such a work of fiction, and I know they don't claim that it's fact, but it bothers me so much because there's so many women that I really like from that time period. I'm intrigued by. I think I especially was excited for this movie because I feel really invested in that time period in Hollywood. Like, I know a lot of those women. I've seen a lot of those movies because that's more what I watched growing up rather than MTV and stuff. And Marilyn, I feel like Marilyn, we've made her fat, dumb, and a sex worker, essentially. And we've made Audrey Hepburn angelic. Even Audrey had affairs. And not saying she's a bad person. I'm just saying, like, even for me who borderline idolizes Audrey Hepburn was not a perfect person, but we've made her infallible because of her humanitarian work and how cute she was. But someone like Marilyn just did not receive the same accolades. And they did the same thing with Elizabeth Taylor, where she became just hypersexualized because her body, she and Marilyn had these like banging bodies. And that bothers me. And then it also bothers me that we make her Marilyn dumb because Marilyn, every account of every man who respected her and did treat her with kindness said she was very intelligent. And we've just made her to be a bimbo, and she wasn't. And there's nothing wrong with not being intelligent, but I hate that we've given her this fake story. And all this movie, people who claim to respect Marilyn and they're like, we have to talk about her memory, all they did was make it look like all she could do was sexual things, had a bunch of abortions and a bunch of things we could judge her on. And that's bizarre to me. I don't understand how that's honoring her memory. It's exploitative and gross.
And she was obviously like, she was a very well-respected actress. She did a lot of different movies. She was obviously an icon during her day and even still today. So like, you don't get all that stuff by being, unintelligent or by making dumb career decisions, which is obviously something she did not do.
Right.
So like the fact that the movie portrays it as such is just a very odd choice. Another dislike for me, I did not like the beginning of the movie. This movie's already 2 hours and 46 minutes long. It's way too long. I don't need 25 minutes at the beginning with young Marilyn as a child. Let's get into Ana De Armas. Let's get into the part of her career where everybody, recognizes her. They tried to set up somewhat of a storyline there with the mother because that character does come back at certain points in the movie, but there's no real connection there. You're like, her mom was at least portrayed in this movie as being absolute trash. So why she was trying to rekindle that relationship didn't really move me as a viewer. There was no redeeming qualities of her mother really. So I was like, why don't you just ditch her and, move on with your life? So I just was like, man, when are we going to get to Ana De Armas and, the stuff, the Marilyn Monroe of Hollywood fame and of movies and screen and, pictures and all that. So, didn't like the beginning of this movie really at all.
And I was so bothered at the beginning by seeing Julianne Nicholson's boobs because, again, this leads into my second greatest rage with this film is the sexual content, the needless, pointless sexual content, and again, exploitative. So Julianne Nicholson, can you imagine going your entire life and being a well-respected actress and you continue to get jobs in Hollywood and she might not have cared. I don't think she did to show her breasts or whatever on screen. But the fact that like that's where she decided to do it because the director was like, we have to see your boobs. It has nothing to do with the scene. It has nothing to do with your character's done after this, but we have to have this. And I thought, what is the point? And that's a big issue for me with movies. Like, I remember my mom was really bothered by The Count of Monte Cristo because you see the two of them swimming naked in the pool and then they get pregnant out of wedlock. And she was just like, I don't know why that's in the movie. And I'm not like complaining about my mom. I just remember explaining to her mom, that's part of why the story is so powerful because this baby is born and that starts like the whole vengeance thing. And, it's like a ripple effect. So that had to happen for the story. And you don't even see them naked. Like it's implied. This movie truly is like why did we even do that? You're just throwing in content and it's not even sexy. Like it's not even for a point. And this whole movie was like that. And Jared, I think you and I texted about this little, but the abortions were out of control. They were disgusting.
CGI fetuses in this movie. I don't
floating
they're just
floating around. Yeah. Why?
Yeah.
And
I don't need to see her get multiple abortions.
Yeah. And I would bet that most of the people involved in this movie are very liberal and are pro-choice and all of that stuff. But I feel like it's triggering for people who are not in that same camp to see floating fetuses and then see them get killed. Like,
Mm-hmm.
abortions completed. And they don't show, if anybody's wondering, they show like scenes, like there's a scene where you are basically inside a vagina and they use a speculum to like pry it open so you can see, and that's like them imitating what's going to happen. And I just thought, why? What was the point of this? And why am I in a vagina? And why is this happening? It just made no sense.
And
It
then,
was gross.
like, during one of the abortions, she's completely naked. Now, I've never gotten an abortion, but it seems like more of a bottom half of the body procedure than top half. So I don't know why she was topless in that particular. There's a lot of scene. We texted about this too. There's a lot of points in the movie where she's topless for no real reason, where she could have been either wearing a shirt, she could have been wearing a bra. There was no reason for her to be topless. And I'm not a person that's like against sex in movies or somebody.
No.
If it's relevant to the story, if it's a romantic movie and the two characters are having sex, that makes sense. If you have somebody naked to maybe show that it's a very vulnerable moment for them or something, that could also be a good use of that. But there are multiple times in this movie when she's naked, at least from the waist up, and you're like, why? There's no reason for this right now. This is just a normal scene. Why are her boobs out?
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say, because I agree wholeheartedly with Jared, Ana De Armas is stunning. I think she is one of the sexiest women I've ever seen in my whole life. I thought that before this movie. I've now seen her topless. I was not disappointed. But at the same point, like the only time I think it was relevant to the film, there were actually nude photos of Marilyn. That's true. That we know that happened because she took them before she got famous. She was like, she needed to live. So that's what she did. She was kind of tricked into taking these photos. So even that, if they just showed those photos and Ana De Armas is portraying her and she's topless, fine, put that in the movie. Okay, great. And we all get to see it. Woohoo. But Jared's right. We're not even exaggerating. It was like 12 more times that she was topless. And it was for moments that weren't even relevant. Like no one was having sex. She wasn't changing her clothes. She was just lying around in her room without a top on. And I thought, why? Mm-hmm. It was just really disturbing. I hated it.
There was a point in this movie where I was like, I don't want to see her boobs anymore. Think about that statement coming from a straight man that finds Ana De Armas insanely attractive. I was like,
know.
I don't need to see her breasts anymore in this film.
No,
like it's not.
Put them away. And then this is really truly it. Ana has said, this is the only thing that makes me kind of roll my eyes a little bit. She's like, I hate that this stuff is going to be out there now. Like everyone's going to see me topless and then they're going to be able to talk about it. Like she's saying she doesn't like it. And I thought there's an easy fix for that. Don't do this movie. Like that. I really don't have a lot of pity for. Now I don't think people should exploit her either. And that would be disgusting. But I do think like you could have avoided that at every turn. And also I find it surprising that if she is bothered by that, why she even did this movie in the first place, knowing how many scenes would show her breasts. So
yeah, like that had to be.
Gross.
Now I don't know where they made that decision, but if that was in the script, or in stage directions, then like you would know beforehand. And if it was happening during filming, then I would expect her as an actress or her agent or somebody on set to say like, hey, she doesn't want to be topless in all these scenes. So we need to, if you want certain moments that might be able to be applicable, but I forget. I think I read somewhere that she's like topless for like, it's either 9 minutes or 12 minutes in this movie, which is an insane amount of time.
Yeah.
For, and it's a long movie, but still that's like so many scenes.
Well, and that alone, I think that time alone, like that amount of time is almost enough to make it NC-17. Just that, not even the abortions. And there was a rape scene. We didn't even bring up the rape. Yeah. There was a rape scene that was awful. I mean, and that's at the beginning. And that was hard for me to watch. The blowjob with Kennedy, disgusting. That guy isn't even good looking. It was gross. There's just a lot. If it's not coming across, I did not like this film at all.
Yeah. Yep. This was not a great movie at all.
It's in my bottom 3 for the year.
It's my least favorite movie of the year. So yeah.
It's my second right now.
Okay. It's going to be ranked really low for me. Also, this is not, before we move on to our scores, this is not my original point, but I heard this on another thing that I was listening to. Somebody said this movie probably would have been a lot better if it was directed by a woman. And I think I would have to agree.
Absolutely.
So not my original thought, but they brought that point up, and I thought that is an excellent point because that, a woman probably would have been able to handle this a lot better. It seems like the director of this movie, Andrew Dominik, just wanted to see Ana De Armas naked on set. I mean, it seems like it's almost somewhat of like a perverted nature. I think it is a little bit, to have her be naked so much of this movie. It's not necessary. So that was big. Oh, and the last dislike, I guess, is there's no real positive moments in this movie. Everything that happens is just depressing. Like, it's just 3 hours of like another huge traumatic moment in her life. Another depressing thing happens. I mean, so there's no way for you as a viewer to even like gain a little bit of happiness from this because the whole movie is just so sad.
Yeah. And she didn't have a tremendously happy life.
Yeah.
But there were some moments of lightness. I mean, she did get to go to these glamorous parties. She had friends. She was famous. She did get to get married. She was excited, I think, to be pregnant because I do think she did have miscarriages. Like, I think that they know that. But anyway, it was just depressing.
Yeah, they act like in this movie that all she did was either sit in her hotel room by herself or in her apartment, or she was having sex with a famous person. There's nothing else that she possibly could have done with her life. So, okay, that's our thoughts on Blonde. So, time to give our scores now. This is not going to be a very high rating from me. I'm going to give this movie a 27 out of 100. I did not like it. I thought things I mentioned, I thought cinematography was good. I thought Adrien Brody, and I respect Ana De Armas trying in this role. You can tell she is definitely, this is a hard movie for anybody to probably do well at. She's trying her best. The accent thing obviously is not great, but the acting, I mean, she's doing the best that she can here with what she's been given. So, 27 out of 100.
I am right there with you. I'm giving this a 33 out of 100 for all the reasons I stated. But I did want to bring up, if you're wondering what's come close to being this bad, I gave Cats a 20.
Cats is still worse. Yeah.
And I gave Space Jam: A New Legacy 40. So I liked Space Jam: A New Legacy more than this film.
I mean,
that's really
it's got Bugs Bunny in it. I mean, you get some points for that.
I don't think anything will ever be as offensive as Cats. I just don't.
No. I think Cats is going to be still the worst thing we've seen on this show, unless we just watch something really awful. So, you can follow the Silver Screen Podcast on social media at Podcast Silver on Twitter and Instagram. Search the Silver Screen Podcast on Facebook. You can also find our Letterboxd profiles in the show description. Scroll down on whatever podcast app you're listening in and open the description or the notes, and you can click the link there to go to our Letterboxd profiles. Also, be sure to rate and review the show. We really appreciate when you do that. That definitely helps us out, gets the show to more people. So we thank you very much for that. On our next episode, we are going to be reviewing the new David O. Russell film, Amsterdam. Now, David O. Russell, another problematic character in terms of real life, not fiction. But he's been known to not be the nicest of guys on movie sets, but he does have half of Hollywood in this movie, including Christian Bale, Margot Robbie, John David Washington, Chris Rock, Anya Taylor-Joy, Mike Myers, Taylor Swift, Timothy Olyphant. That's not even the whole cast. De Niro, Rami Malek. They're all in this movie. So we had to review it. I also think it can't be awful, right? Like all those people. It
can't be worse than the last few we've seen.
Yeah, that's my thoughts. So that'll be our next episode of the show, reviewing Amsterdam.
Until next time, we'd like to thank the Academy.